Traditional and powerful families have existed for a long time, such as the powerful royal families that have controlled countries and great empires for hundreds of years. In recent centuries, with the changes that have taken place in society, such as the end of feudalism, the Industrial Revolution, and the emergence of capitalism, power has gradually shifted from royal families to big businessmen and, in many cases, their families. Thus, families with the surnames Ford, Rockefeller, Rothschild, and Morgan, among others, have become synonymous with power, and many people come to imagine that these and other families have so much power that they control the world. But there is one little-known family that has more money than any other, and controls major companies in sectors as diverse as the manufacture of household appliances, military fighter planes, and medicines. This Swedish family has been at the center of many historical events for more than a century, and its influence has spread throughout Europe and the world. Who is this family, and how has it achieved so much power? Which companies and brands are under their control? And how do they exert so much influence on the lives of thousands or millions of people? When you Google for the 10 richest families in the world, you can find different results. In almost every list, the Walton family, descendants of the founder of the Walmart chain, ranks first. In the other positions, several wealthy families swap positions depending on the website searched, and names such as Hermes, Mars, and even the Al Saud family from the Saudi royal family appear. According to the most recent data, the richest family, the Waltons, has a combined net worth of about $220 billion, but curiously, there is a family with an estimated net worth of about $250 billion that does not appear on any list. To understand the reasons for this family's total discretion, we have to go back in time and learn about the origins of the Wallenberg fortune and how they managed to preserve and grow their wealth for more than a century, as well as expand their influence by staying out of the spotlight. The family's records date back to 1670, but the story of their fortune did not begin until a few centuries later, when André Oskar Wallenberg founded the Stockholms and Skilda Bank in 1857. Until then, the family had no connection to the banking sector, let alone business experience. To give you an idea, André himself was an officer in the Swedish Navy, and it was in this role that he had the opportunity to travel to various countries around the world and learn about the different banking systems that were being developed, and he was even able to personally observe the effects of the 1837 crisis that hit the United States. The mistakes made by the banks are considered the main reasons for the outbreak of the crisis that became known as the Panic of 1837, and also allowed the Swede to learn what banks should not do. Decades later, all this knowledge was used to found the bank that revolutionized the Swedish banking system and enabled the Wallenbergs to become the richest family in the world. Today, the banking sector is highly regulated all over the world, and opening a bank is a complicated and money-consuming task. But since we are talking about 1850, everything was different, and founding a bank or a restaurant in Sweden was almost the same job. The institutions were also very different and basically served as a vault, since they kept the customers' money and did not pay any interest or remuneration. It was André Oskar Wallenberg who saw the opportunity to lend his clients money and return part of the profits to the savers. It may sound like an exaggeration, but there were queues in front of the bank because many people wanted to give up their profits and savings in exchange for the profits. The customers' money was used to finance the industrialization of the country, the construction of railroads, and the interest earned on the loans made the banker one of the richest men in the country. With so much cash on hand, the bank began acquiring shares and became a partner in Sweden's largest companies. After the founder's death in 1886, his sons took over the business and continued to increase the family's fortune and power. A change in Swedish law in 1916, which made it difficult for banks to become shareholders in the industry, could have posed a problem for the Wallenberg family. But instead of selling their shares, the family decided to set up an investment company called Investor AB, which created a first degree of protection for the family's image. The following year, Knut Agathon Wallenberg, who had taken over from his father, decided to set up a foundation and transferred his wealth to the organization. Other members of the family followed suit, and today, the Wallenberg fortune, which ranges from 250 billion to 300 billion depending on the source, is legally owned by 20 foundations. although the foundations are now run by the fifth generation of the family, and their members enjoy the money generated. They are not considered owners of the companies, so you won't find any Wallenbergs even on the list of Sweden's richest people. But how did this family, even in the shadows, achieve so much influence and power? At the same time as the family's financial power was growing, the Wallenbergs developed closer ties with the local government, which allowed the family's influence to extend beyond Sweden's borders. Knut Agathon Wallenberg was a member of the Stockholm City Council for more than 30 years, actively participating in the development of the city. He was also a member of parliament for 12 years, serving as a senator between 1914 and 1917. He was also Minister of Foreign Affairs, directly involved in the negotiations during World War I. Another Wallenberg of the second generation of bankers who became involved in political activities was Andres Wallenberg, a law graduate who held positions in the Swedish judiciary. He also represented his country in various negotiations and institutions, such as the League of Nations. From this account, it may seem that Andres Wallenberg only excelled in relations with the public authorities, but he also contributed to the growth of the family fortune, as he coordinated the purchase of several companies and the family's entry into the mining business in Sweden. A little later, we will see how these actions further maximized the family's power. The second generation of the Wallenbergs was important for the growth of the companies, the tightening of relations with the government, and the beginning of a long history of philanthropy. As since the beginning of the last century, the family has donated considerable amounts of money to a wide variety of causes through their foundations. But it was the third generation that really wrote the family name into the history of the last century. Despite all the financial success, which could easily have led to news and great exposure of its members, the family has always opted for discretion. The most famous member of the family became known for reasons unrelated to the family fortune. Raoul Wallenberg, the grandson of the bank's founder who was not involved in running the family business, became Swedish ambassador to Hungary during World War II. In his post, he helped thousands of Jews escape from Nazi extermination camps. Before the end of the war, the ambassador was arrested by the Soviet army on charges of espionage. According to official Soviet versions, Raoul died in 1947 after suffering a heart attack in his cell, but there are differences of opinion, and many believe he was executed. Interestingly, while Raoul saved thousands of Jews from Hitler, his cousins, Jacob Wallenberg and Marcus Wallenberg Jr., took advantage of the war to increase the family's fortune and power by negotiating with both sides. Several companies acquired in previous decades, such as SKF Bearings, played an important role in this period. As the company was one of the few that mastered the technique of producing steel ball bearings, and the family also had investments in mining the minerals needed to make the bearings, SKF had a de facto monopoly on production in Europe and was able to profit from this. Although it supplied material to both sides, the company sold a much larger quantity to the Germans. Although they had made agreements with England to stop the sales, the Wallenbergs smuggled products, equipment, and minerals into Germany. When the war ended, it was discovered that the Wallenbergs had bought up several German companies, such as Bosch, to prevent them from being expropriated by the victors. According to the discovered contracts, there were agreements to buy back the companies from their owners with a good financial reward for the Wallenbergs. But that was all a long time ago. Was the family still so powerful after the war? The fact is that by transferring all the family's assets to foundations, the Wallenbergs were able to prevent disputes between descendants from wiping out the fortune they had earned. This is something that other families who have been at the top of the business world, like the Vanderbilts for example, who in a few decades followed the traditional way of passing on their fortune to heirs, lost some of the largest fortunes ever achieved in history. Even several families that still retain part of their wealth are poorer today than in the past. Rare are the cases like the Swedish family that manages to increase its wealth and power over so many years and generations. After World War II, the Wallenbergs became even more powerful, and by the 1970s owned shares in so many companies that 4 out of 10 Swedes worked for a company owned by the family. The clan's companies were present in virtually every sector, including civil and military aviation, mining, automobile and truck manufacturing, banking, metallurgy, transportation, household appliance manufacturing, computers, pulp and paper, telecommunications, and many others. Their power was so great that approximately one-third of Sweden's GDP was generated by the Wallenberg companies. With a long-term investment philosophy, the family still retains a large part of these companies and today controls some brands that you are sure to be familiar with. And I would venture to say that you have probably bought Wallenberg products. Among the companies controlled by the family are large companies such as Saab, a major aerospace and defense company. The telecommunications company Ericsson, a major player in one of today's most strategic sectors, is also among the companies in which the family has a major stake. Depending on the sector in which you work, you have probably already used some Atlas Copco equipment, which produces power generators, compressors, mining equipment and tools for various types of service. Atlas Copco is also part of the family's investment portfolio. Other well-known companies in which the Wallenberg family has a large stake are the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca and the US stock exchange Nasdaq. To list all the companies in which the Wallenberg family invests would take a much longer video. But to close this topic, if you are not familiar with any of the companies I have mentioned, you are certainly familiar with the home appliance manufacturer Electrolux. The company is present in more than 160 countries and manufactures products that many of us have surely used at one time or another. The family owns approximately 30% of the company. Just as they have managed to expand their fortune, the Wallenbergs have also increased their influence around the world. With an established foothold in Europe, the family established close ties with the Chinese Communist Party in the 1970s. Peter Wallenberg, a fourth-generation member of the family, was close to Chinese presidents Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. It is also possible to find links between the family and politicians from various parts of the world, such as US Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. The family also exerts a strong influence by participating in various institutions, such as the International Chamber of Commerce and the Institute of International Finance. Even Jacob Wallenberg, one of the members of its fifth generation who is currently at the helm, was once vice president of the World Economic Forum. The latest demonstration of the power of this business dynasty has been Sweden's decision to apply for membership of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a controversial move that has divided the country and has the family as one of its biggest supporters. For Sweden to be accepted into the group, it needs the approval of all countries, and Turkey threatened to veto this entry, only changing its decision after a visit by the Swedish Prime Minister and some of the Wallenberg family's top business executives. The Wallenbergs are currently grooming 30 members of the sixth generation of the family to soon take control of all the wealth and power acquired over nearly 2 centuries. If the next Wallenbergs apply everything the family has done so far, they may continue to get richer, increase their power, decide the future of millions of people, and all without drawing attention to themselves. If you liked this video, you will definitely like this one. Just click on it. Thank you very much for watching it, and see you next video.